Hey, what's up guys? Jay here. This is gonna be a different video than you guys have seen on this channel in a while. It's actually a travel vlog. I've not done a travel vlog in probably like 8 or 9 years, to be honest. Probably since one of the last CESs we went to. But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm actually heading to New York City to check out the documentary premiere of the Frogfathers 2, which is a collaboration with World of Warships. It's probably one of the strangest tie-ins that you would probably find on this channel, but you guys know I'm a huge fan of the World of Warships franchise. I've been playing the game for 8 years, and they just celebrated their 10th anniversary, but this isn't about that. The World of Wargaming team has basically funded this documentary for the Frogfathers 2, which is all about taking 4 modern Special Forces veterans through the steps of the Okinawa campaign. But more importantly, it's not like a glorification of war or anything like that. It's talking about the impact it had on the environment, the ecosystem, and the repairs that they're trying to do now 80 years later to just kind of repair the damage that was done almost 100 years ago. There's lots of stories from descendants and people that were around at the time or family members of the time, and it's just a really good humanitarian story, just like the original Frogfathers, which did the same thing when it talks about Normandy and D-Day. So it was held on the USS Intrepid, which is a World War II era aircraft carrier. It was actually struck by a kamikaze and survived. It's got a huge wealth of history on that museum ship, and I'm very excited for that. And you guys know me, I like boats, and if I have an opportunity to go to one, I'm going to. I've been to the Midway, I've been to the Missouri, I've been to the Iowa, I want to go to the North Carolina, I want to go check out the Fletcher. There's other ships, I'd love to go see the Belfast out in England, but I digress. If you've been following me long enough, you would know this isn't just about my love for the game, but this is also a tie-in with the US Navy's 250th anniversary. So it's kind of like a collaborative effort talking about, you know, the Frogfathers, the original Frogmen, which as you know became known as the US Navy SEALs later on in the 1980s. But my father was a 20-year veteran of the US Navy, having several different roles within the Navy during that time. And one of those roles during Vietnam was actually UDT, or underwater demolitions, and a frogman himself. And then he ended his career as a US Seabee trying to rebuild, because he went from kind of blowing stuff up to rebuilding stuff, and it really ties into this story. So when I was offered to go out to New York City to see this closed premiere, it was something I absolutely felt like I had to do just to honor my father who passed away in 2017. So enjoy this travel vlog. It's more than just checking out the Intrepid and talking about the documentary. I take you on some adventures around New York City because my wife came with me and we added a few days on there to do the touristy stuff that I've never done before. So with that out of the way, guys, please enjoy this vlog. And the Frogfathers 2 is not out for distribution yet, but it should be hopefully soon, and I'll put some links down below. And if you haven't checked out Frogfathers 1, or the first Frogfathers, it's a heavy but very, very important watch, I think, for humanity today. All right, so next day, I'm gonna freak you guys out, okay? So before I do that, today was kind of fun. If you watched on Twitch, I just did a little sights, sounds, and smells of New York, although you couldn't smell. It wasn't smell-o-vision, it was for us. We just walked from like 35th Street or 36th Street and 8th over to Rockefeller Center, or Rockefeller Square, whatever it's called. Because we wanted to go over there and go to FAO Schwartz, get some stuff for the kids for Christmas and gifts and whatnot. And then we were over at a drama bookstore because my wife and kids are all into like musicals and stuff. So she wanted to check out the bookstore that was all about like the musicals and stuff. So, but I'm getting ready now to actually go to the whole reason why I'm here. Celebration being hosted by World of Warships. Obviously, I'm not gonna wear this. This is what you guys are used to seeing me in. And the reason why I'm gonna freak you guys out right now is because I'm now gonna look like this. I don't normally wear black t-shirts and khaki shorts everywhere I go, just most of the places I go. But I do actually own a suit, although this is a bit more business casual, they're calling it. Yeah, so here we go. I think I am presentable. And I do mean every time I'm wearing something other than a black t-shirt with a JayzTwoCents logo on it, people are like, oh, he cleans up nice. What I hear is, well, he looks like shit most of the time. Okay, so small update. We got to the Intrepid, and apparently the arrival times got pushed back an hour, and we didn't get notified. So now we are walking down the street to a very original bar called The Tavern. When you name a bar The Tavern, it better be very tavern-esque, if you will. He's gonna hit that Jeep. Ooh, boy. Man, I tell you, in New York, they play the game of millimeters when it comes to whether or not buses and trucks fit somewhere. All right, well, there it is right there, straight across. Hopefully the wind's not messing up the audio too bad, but that's The Tavern. Yeah, so this is obviously the west side. We're right one block over from where the Intrepid is. Okay, so we finally made it to the right place. We're on board with the Intrepid Museum right now. We're in one of the hangars where they have a lot of the planes and stuff. But I found someone from Wargaming that I've actually wanted to talk to for a while. You guys know I like boats. I gotta do the line, right? I like boats! But I've always wondered, so your official title is, and it's long, so I'm gonna have you say it.
Regional Publishing Director for the Americas.
For World of Warships, and his name is Arthur. And I'm curious as to, one, how much time is involved in bringing a ship from research to the game, and two, how do you choose which ships?
It really depends on how difficult the research is. So over time, the game's been in production for a decade now, so live for a decade, and then in development for about 14. Mm-hmm. And over that time, we've developed such a big archive of blueprints that sometimes it doesn't take us a long time to research because we just flip open a book that we already have, like in our archives. But if the research has to be done from scratch, so to say, then it might be 1 or 2 years of research, depending on who has to go where, whether we have to get permission. Sometimes we have to get government permission from like the French Navy or the American Navy or whatever. And after 2 years, we generally end up with a blueprint that's either a real life blueprint or one that would be filled in by our design team in-house.
Because there are some gaps sometimes, right, in the historical information and blueprinting, or is it usually pretty solid?
It really depends on the ships. So, there are ships that have a wide array of documentation, and there are ships that are kind of obscure that either were classified for a long time, they never made it into production, and they might only have a freeboard sketch or, a rough design outline, concept outline, and then from there we have a team that is actual shipbuilders, so people with naval engineering backgrounds who will then draw an actual blueprint based on that, or fill in whatever's missing based on naval engineering.
I think it's the detail that's really stood out to me when it comes to World of Warships, because I'd like to do model building. And I'm not going to lie, there's been lots of times I've used footage from in the game when I'm going close up and panning around, looking at details to try and figure out color schemes or how certain camos maybe appeared. So the detail is incredible. I'm just kind of curious, when you talked about some ships being more obscure, or maybe they're more classified, like Yamato class really comes to mind, right? So I know the Japanese has been very... they've really held that blueprint close to their heart and stuff. So how do you come up with stuff like that where you know there's huge design gaps in what you're able to do, or are you kind of filling it in with your own creativity?
I feel like that's not a great example because yes, it might have been something that, for example, the Japanese government, the Japanese Navy held close to heart, but they did that during the war and then a period after the war. But over time, it's also built up a huge cultural legacy. There's so many media about Yamato. There's anime about Yamato. There's anime about space Yamato, right? So because of that, the amount of information has boomed with that cultural significance. So it's not hard to find models, of Yamato that may or may not be accurate, but just based on the volume of that information, you can fill in all the gaps and come up with an accurate model. So that's not really an obscure ship anymore because of that cultural significance. But there are, some German wartime concepts and designs that never made it into production. Hitler's would-be super weapons that never saw the light of day. And those are harder to find because those were classified in Germany for a long time. And now usually they are in museums that we have to go and do actual research, photocopying physical prints weeks at a time sometimes.
I think that's one thing I love about the game is the fact that there's just as many research ships or just design that you're running off of rather than actual existed, entered service ships. So I think it's kind of neat to see what some of these classes would have looked like had they truly existed. Last question. from when the team decides, hey, let's bring this ship to the game. If let's say you don't have to do a lot of travel and you have readily available documents, how long does it take to really design the ship and kind of get it into maybe the early access and then into the actual game?
It depends on the size of the ship and the amount of stuff that's on the model physically and polygons that go into the production. So the bigger the ship, the longer it'll take to make a viable 3D model. So let's say something as small as a destroyer or a submarine, maybe like 3-4 months of modeling for a person in our team, and then a relatively complicated battleship or a huge carrier is going to be 9-10 months of modeling. Then there's going to be balancing design, it's probably going to be 2 months, and then testing about 2 months. Some of those periods overlap, depending on when we can start testing versus when the design is finished. And then usually there's a 3-month period of from a build to the build's release. That's just public testing mostly.
Yeah, because getting the model right is one thing, but then getting the balance right is the other. You're dealing with a game, but you also want to be historically accurate. So it's trying to figure out that balancing act. Well, Arthur, thank you so much for talking with me today. If you guys have no idea what we're talking about, obviously World of Warships is a game by Wargaming, and it's free to play. I got a link down below with some starter bonuses and packs, so make sure you guys check it out. What we're going to do now before we go and kind of check out the Frogfathers documentary is we're going to take a look at some of the cool stuff here in the hangar before it gets too crowded, because we kind of have like open access right now, which is really rare on these ships. Well, thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So that was kind of a fun interview talking with Artur from Wargaming. I always wondered, like, the design choices they make, why do they choose certain ships? Why do some of the ships have certain designs, in terms of maybe armor and damage models and such? I think there's a bit of balancing that takes place versus just historical accuracy with the ship. I think it's a bit of both, but that's pretty cool. We talked about like carrier gameplay and some of the choices that were made on purpose. Like, for instance, one of the questions I had asked was, hey, when you're flying a carrier or an aircraft squadron or a torpedo squadron and you get to your target, only some of your planes drop their torpedoes and you got to come around and do another run. I was like, why did you make the choice to not let all your planes just drop their torps at once for balance reasons? And he pointed out, and I forgot, that that's the way it was when CVs were first introduced into the game, but there was such a outcry of like, man, it felt so overpowered. Even though the torpedoes did less damage, it's just so many of them were coming at once, and disables and rudder jams and engine room flooding and all that sort of stuff. They just decided for balance purposes to make it swap how many torpedoes you can launch at one time. So of course we had some fun discussion off camera about some balancing techniques and things that I think would be neat to see in the game. Not that my opinion holds any sort of weight. I just, as a dedicated player now for like 8 years, the game's been out for 10, I played for 8. It was kind of fun to talk to one of the actual people that was involved in design and stuff for many years with this title. But anyway, enough about that. Let's go ahead and I showed you guys some B-roll, but let's just do a little quick tour here in the hangar so you guys can see some of this cool stuff that's on display. So this is a scale model of the Intrepid in its World War II trim. So I'm not sure what the scale is on this. It doesn't say what the scale is on here. No, not that I can tell. It's a pretty good scale. It's probably like it's probably a 1/100 scale. It's pretty long. If I had to guess, it's at least 5.5 feet long, almost 2 meters. But it's cool because this came out around the same time as the Midway, and this was when naval warfare was changing a lot. And this is when aircraft carriers obviously became king. And this is what it looked like when it went through its retrofit for its Vietnam, the Essex class changes. So you see we have an angled deck. Obviously there's an elevator lift right on the angled deck. It's lost all of its surface guns for the most part. I mean, you got a 50 cal right there. I think it's a 50 cal. Maybe that's a 20 mil, not sure. But obviously, if you look at everything that's on the surface here, right, we've got 5-inch guns sitting right there. You got, those are 50 cals right there on the side for sure. You've got your Bofors anti-air. I mean, you got, look at all this, look at this row of 50 cals right there. Just, it's kind of crazy if you look at how much surface ballistics are on the deck versus this. Like, look how clean this deck is. That's because things had changed and missile guidance and all that sort of stuff started becoming much more prevalent when it comes to the designs. This is a propeller off of the ship. It is pretty dang big. Let's see if we can find here. Yeah, it is 27,000 pounds or 12,000 kilograms. It is 15.5 feet or 4.6 meters tall. That is a big piece of metal right there. So yeah, I mean, look at the airplane behind it, right? You want a really good scale on that. Okay, now one other thing I have to show right here. This is a 22 foot, 4 foot at the widest part, over 4.5 feet tall, 550 pound, 250 piece Lego set of the Intrepid. That is bonkers. Like the level of detail on this. It's in this World War II trim, so you got like Corsairs and you've got probably some Hellcats on there. You've got some Avengers for torpedoes and such, but this is crazy. Like I'm working on a 1/200 scale Bismarck right now that is kicking my butt. And I cannot imagine what they went through to build this thing. Like that is insane. So fun fact, this was actually one of my favorite aircraft when I was obsessed as a kid with World War II. This is the Corsair. Folded wings, the way that the wings kind of arch down. It's also cool to me. It's funny, these aircraft like always seem so small when you watch. They're small by today's standards for sure, but still, they seem so small when you would watch them in documentaries and whatnot, and it's just like, it just feels like it goes on for days, especially considering there's one pilot in there. There's no Rios or anything like that, but it's so neat to see the way it looks up close. Yeah, with the wings folded, it's so cool. Now this part of the museum right here obviously is in one of the hangar bays in the Intrepid. Obviously right above us, that's not a ceiling, that's the armored deck where the flight deck is. But you can see right now with the Corsair with its wings folded up, and then they had the Avenger back farther that way. I'm just trying to imagine what this place would have looked like in the middle of action, and this entire hangar just chock full of ammunition, ordnance, and aircraft. Because some of these aircraft carriers, I believe, carried up to 90 aircraft. I just can't imagine them all shoved into the hangar. Yeah, the hangar goes down for quite a ways, but still, I just can't imagine that. Now, one thing I had said earlier in this video was that that Wargaming was celebrating the Navy's 250th anniversary. That's true, obviously, with the game codes and such. But this event right here is actually for the premiere of the Frog Fathers documentary that Wargaming produced, which is really interesting concept. So if you guys aren't aware, the Frog Fathers, like the Frogmen, they were the first like SEALs. They were like the first Navy Special Forces team, UDTs, underwater demolition, that sort of stuff. My father actually went through UDT school. But anyway, yeah, some fun stories regarding that. But this is neat because the concept here is they're taking 4 modern Navy SEALs, and I'm not sure if they're active duty or if they are retired. It doesn't really matter. The point is, they're taking them and kind of walking them through the steps of they're calling their Frog Fathers, like the founders of this Navy Special Forces, on what they're calling the last battle of the Pacific. So they're going to kind of like retrace their steps as a really neat, interesting documentary. Don't know what to expect. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet. This is the premiere, but I think it's going to be really, really cool. And you guys are going to be able to watch it too. Not at the time you guys are seeing this video. It'll be up for distribution later somewhere else. Not entirely sure where. We'll make sure that we update you guys with that information once it's available. But if you're into history and you're into like any of the battles in the Pacific, or even like any of the stuff that happened over in Europe or the South Pacific, Wargaming has done such an amazing job at like preserving history and doing amazing documentaries usually through animation and then real world interview, like real footage for interviews. Usually they're anywhere between like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. Like they've got some really epic footage. It's all animated, but the way the final Battle of the Yamato went down, stuff about Musashi, stuff about the Kriegsmarine and the Tirpitz and the Bismarck, just keeping so much of that history preserved, because although it's a dark history, it's not a great topic, it's important to remember this sort of stuff. And just seeing that they're not just a game company, they're actually a history company that makes history playable, which is one of the things that just really catches my attention about World of Warships. That's one of the reasons why it resonates with me so well. And like I said, I've played the game long before I was ever sponsored by them, so it's really an honor to be invited to something like this, because even though my father passed in 2017, I would have I don't care if he was in a wheelchair or not, I would have drug him all the way from California to New York to be a part of this. So I feel like I'm kind of honoring him by being here. I think those of you that have followed me long enough know what that means to me. All right, it's a little noisy. There was a reception afterward for the attendees. This was a closed kind of a screening for it, but man, as we make our way out here, I'm not sure exactly which way I'm supposed to go. Guess we'll go this way, see what happens. It was a really interesting documentary because it doesn't just talk about, it doesn't glorify war, it doesn't glorify any of the terribleness of history regarding the Okinawa and some of the Japanese conflicts that happen between the U.S. and Japan, but it was about talking about the terrible things that have happened in the past and how we should definitely not forget these things because you learn from the past and you don't want to obviously repeat some of the worst things that humans have done, but also about going and repairing some of the physical damage that even happened in Okinawa. So I had no idea, I've done a lot of studying about World War II, but one thing I didn't know was that in Okinawa, the coral reef actually really hindered the operation of getting onto the beaches of Okinawa. So UDTs, or the underwater demolition teams, which are frogmen, and they preceded the SEALs. The SEALs didn't start, I don't think, until 1983. But their job was to go in there with basically a pair of shorts, and if it's windy, I apologize, but to go in there with a pair of shorts, a dive knife, a snorkel, and not even a snorkel, just a mask. They had to hold their breath, and then set explosives to blow up the reef. That way the landing craft could make it to the beach. Now, obviously, the coral reef is very important to a lot of the Japanese coastlines and stuff there, and for marine life and all that. So what they've done is, one of the partners for this documentary here is called Force Blue, and what they do is they're made up of all veterans, and they go to a lot of different places around the world where conflict have caused natural destruction and start to repair and rebuild. So I'm not going to give away too much in this documentary, but it was a lot about that as well, and the humanitarian side of it. So it's not like glorifying war or anything like that. In fact, it goes heavily into the impact of it. And of course, you can't just ignore the past. But anyway, I'm gonna go and get on out of here right now. I may vlog a little bit more tomorrow. I'm gonna be here for 2 more days, kind of doing the touristy sightseeing stuff here in New York. I've only ever been here for work back when I worked in software, and a long time ago, and I would always here do my thing and get the hell out. I was always by myself, so I never had anyone to really go around with. So my wife and I added a few days to this trip. I think we might try and hit up Central Park on Friday. Tomorrow we're gonna go see a show. But yeah, how do we get out? Everything looks closed and locked. I might now be property of the Intrepid, I'm not entirely sure, so. Okay, so we're in Times Square right now. Probably one of the most touristy areas you could possibly go to in New York. I've learned crosswalks and lights, you just go. And you play Frogger. Actually, it's kind of dead right now in Times Square. It's what, 9 in the morning right now? 9 something in the morning? So here, I'll turn it around. We'll just kind of take a little quiet walking tour, let you guys hear the sounds and see the things, and you can't smell the smells, but that's okay.
I just wanted to find a New York one.
For those that are wondering, that building right up there, the one in the middle that's got the signs and stuff on it that says 2025 at the top, that is where the ball drops. Yeah, that pole. It's a very high pole to ride. Oh, not that kind of pole. So anyway, I think it's funny that I'm seeing Call of Duty Black Ops 7 and Battlefield 6 ads all over Times Square. Makes me wonder what they've paid for that. Any advertising in Times Square is going to cost $1 bajillion. I just can't imagine for the game. All right, well, we made it. There it is. Let's go get inside and see what kind of trouble we can get into. So this is kind of neat. There's like this whole museum in here showing you like original blueprints and designs for the Empire State Building. Apparently it weighs 730 million pounds. I don't know what that is in tons. You'd have to divide it by 2,000, I guess. But that is crazy. But there's a lot of photos of what it looked like at the time that it was built, like what New York looked like. Clearly there were no buildings anywhere near as tall as this thing. Or there's like a time lapse of it being built right here. 19 1931. Man, like it really is an engineering marvel if you think about the time period. 3,400 tradesmen, 13 months to build it. I feel like that's faster than anything is built today. So they've got this one room where you go in and it's kind of an idea of what it would have been like up on the floors where they were working the steel. So this guy's over here, right, heating up the rivet to make it soft. He's got his hand cranking forge. So he tosses it to this guy, he catches it, and then he takes a pair of tongs and sets it in place, and then the jackhammers start jackhammering it on both sides. And they did that all the way up the building.
And you get to see it built. Keep your arms and legs inside and keep your eyes open. See those hot rivets flying through the air? Nice catch, Lou! Get those planks out of the way, huh?
So this is the Hudson. Oh, the Intrepid right over there. And there's the Intrepid over there. Okay, so we're on the 80th floor. Next we're going to the 86th, and then we're going to the 102nd. Look at that. It's pretty though. On this side of the building, it's less windy because it's coming from the other side, so you're being shielded. If we come over here, okay, going back, it's cold over here. Okay, wife got her bagel. Now we're gonna head up to the 101st floor, or 102nd floor. I'm not sure how much different that's gonna be, if that's got outdoors or not, but we're about to find out. Really? We're in that like spire part of it, but it's like panoramic all the way around. All right, it's time to end this vlog so I can actually enjoy some of this stuff firsthand rather than through a camera. But I just want to give a huge thanks to Wargaming for bringing me out here, my wife as well. Check out the Frogfathers 1 movie if you haven't. This is called Frogfathers. And yeah, we'll put some links down below, some information about Frogfathers 2. I think it's a really worthy watch. I kind of asked them the question of like, you guys are Wargaming is a game company, like, why did you guys have interest in doing this documentary? And they said, well, because although we are a gaming company, we are first and foremost a history company. And that's true. If you guys check out the World of Warships like YouTube page, so many cool documentaries up there, some short form, some long form, and they're just so well done and so well narrated. But if you've never even heard of the game, check out the description down below. There's my links there, a lot of cool stuff, freebies, even stuff for returning players. So yeah, although this video was sponsored, it very much was just a, let's take you guys along for the ride. I just wish I could have showed you some of the movie, but you guys have to keep your ears to the ground for that. Hopefully that'll be released for distribution in December. All right guys, thanks for watching. Hope this interesting vlog video was fun for you guys. It was fun for me to take you along. And now I'm walking back across Manhattan again because like I said, getaway sticks are the #1 mode of transportation around here. Not so in LA. So I'm already feeling it, but that's okay. I could stand to lose a little dad pounds.